the AI boom is a bubble.
Many professions like lawyers being taken over by AI.
There will be 20, 30, 50% unemployment.
It's not going to be this thing that's a separate species that puts everybody out of work.
AI. Are we in an AI bubble? Of course. Whoa.
Okay, so clearly there's a lot of hype out there about AI. That might be the most understated statement of the year, but it's frustrating, isn't it? Because everything you see and everything you read is either like maximal optimism or maximal doom. And I think the reality, as usual, is somewhere in the middle. And I have a little bit of a perspective on this because I've been building in this space for quite a few years. In fact, I think it was 3 years ago this week that I launched my first little AI project called DishGen. It's an AI recipe generator. I think it's made close to 2 million recipes for 50,000 users. And it usually generates $1,400 to $1,800 a month in passive subscription revenue. So it's not like one of those fake AI tech bro, like, hey, here's how Claude automates $100,000 a week in revenue kind of things. And in fact, I think it's a great counterpoint to all of the hype. DishGen is kind of a beautiful little case study of where software and small business in general is headed, I think. So I thought today we could take a look at this little project. I'll show you like all the financials and Stripe, all the analytics, talk about like how I built it, what worked, what didn't, and what I think this all means in a larger sense for where software is headed in the age of AI. So let's get into it. So yeah, this is what DishGen looks like today. When it first launched, as you can see in the screencast here, it was a lot more basic. The UI was really simple, and all I did was just create a recipe. You would enter a prompt, and it would generate a recipe. It's gotten a little bit more sophisticated now. About a year ago, I did this overhaul. Still, you enter a prompt, and you can create recipes. So we can try creating a recipe for something that uses up leftover rice and veggies. All right, we could ask for modifications like no onions. It will take the context of that recipe and actually modify it to give us a new version. It also generates meal plans, so we can say, great, make me a 7-day meal plan and use that recipe for dinner one night. And there we go, we have a meal plan for 7 days, and on dinner for day 2, it used the herbed veggie rice stir-fry bowl. There's also a pretty deep account system. So if we go to my account, we can see my recipe history. Everything that I've created will show up here. So I can open the veggie stir fry. There's also meal plans, so you can open up any plan from your history and edit them manually, or you can have the AI generate the full recipe for whatever the meal is that it suggested. So if we want to create the recipe for lentil and kale soup, we just click the button and boom, now that recipe has been generated. Another feature that I added for paying users is the ability to generate images with AI. This is pretty wild. It will take all of the descriptions and the ingredients along with some custom prompting and have GPT image 1, I believe, generate an image of what this would look like, a full food photo of this recipe as if it had been made. It works pretty well most of the time. It's kind of cool. Like, this is not so bad. It looks almost exactly like what I would expect this to look like if I had made it. So we can save that. And under the hood, this is mostly running on GPT-5 Mini, I believe. So there's a lot of custom prompting, a lot of engineering to get it to work right, but the core intelligence is one of the off-the-shelf models. A lot of people have emailed me asking for API access to DishGen as if it was a custom model, but the reality is it's just using GPT-5 with some customizations to get it to produce solid outputs every time. So DishGen is basically what you would call an AI wrapper. It takes the core functionality of the models and wraps it in a nice UI. Wrappers got a really bad name for a couple years as people were saying, well, they're not adding anything of value. You could just use the core chatbot. You could just use GPT instead of using these other services. And then everybody realized that Cursor is basically just a wrapper of VS Code and it's literally printing money. So they kind of stopped saying that. I think it's a double-edged sword. Wrappers are not always going to be a very defensible business. It's pretty easy for other people to copy them. You always have the risk that the core model providers are going to absorb your use case into their chatbots or their software and then kind of put you out of business. But with something like DishGen, where there's a lot of custom prompting and engineering to get it to produce solid outputs, One thing I didn't show you is also personalized profiles. So you can describe yourself, the type of diet you eat, how much you want to spend, how big your household is, and then the model will take that into account on everything it creates, which makes it more convenient. It gives you a history, gives you nicely styled recipe pages. Those all go above and beyond what you would get with the chatbot, and it makes a case that it's a valuable service, even though, yeah, it is using the same intelligence as ChatGPT. But otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward service. It's easy to understand. The other thing I should mention is that I built a mobile app. I built this in Flutter so that it was possible to deploy it onto iOS and mobile at the same time. In some ways, I think the app was a mistake just because it added a ton of extra work. There was a lot of setup to get authentication working and to make everything work in a mobile platform. It hasn't been super successful. It's added maybe a couple $100 a month in revenue, probably not worth the extra work, and I haven't really kept it up as I've added more features to the web platform. The app has kind of gotten left behind a little bit, but it's cool. It works pretty well, and it's out there. As far as how DishGen makes money, almost all of its revenue comes from subscriptions. So the marketing funnel works like this. If you just visit dishgen.com, you type it into Google or something, you show up, you can start using it as a guest, but you'll get rate limited pretty quickly. It'll ask you to create a free account. The free accounts will have expanded usage. You can save all of your recipes and things like that. And if you're using it very lightly, that's usually enough. But you will reach a rate limit, and then it will prompt you to upgrade to a premium service, which has nearly unlimited usage. You can add those personalizations, so you can tell it what type of diet you eat or how big your household is, and it will make it more convenient. You don't have to type that into every prompt. You can have longer chats and quite a few other benefits as well. There's also a business tier, and I think adding this was really smart early on. I realized that a lot of use cases were for small food businesses who maybe they have their own hot sauce or their own olive oil. They could now create recipe books featuring their products. And there's quite a few other types of use cases that businesses will use this for. This adds everything that you would get with the basic premium plan, but commercial rights to redistribute the recipes, the ability to generate a lot more recipe photos. As I showed you with the soup recipe, you can generate AI images to go along with your recipes, which is great if you're sharing them on social media or distributing them. I added one more product as well. I'll quickly mention that. It's a widget. The idea with this is that it's a piece of code you could paste onto your own website to have your own recipe generator with whatever kind of custom instructions you would want for your own audience. I think this is a really cool idea, and it's much more expensive as you would expect. I thought, man, if I could get like 100 customers using this, that would be like an extra $7,000 a month. This is going to be huge. It hasn't really panned out. I have one customer. At one point I had 3 or 4, but I think it's a pretty cool idea, but no matter how much I pushed on it, no matter how much I tried to sell it, there wasn't that much interest. So it is what it is, but I think it's a cool idea. Okay, and between all the different tiers and products, how much revenue does DishGen generate? I'm happy to show you a little bit of my dashboard here. Over the last year, I did about $13,800 in sales volume. The MRR is a little bit wonky just because it's very noisy. A lot of people will pay for an annual subscription, which boosts up the immediate revenue. As you can see, there's big spikes and troughs. So 13,800 in revenue, but about 900 right now in MRR. It does fluctuate quite a bit. You can see the yellow bars here are essentially churn, whereas the purple bars are growth. So there's definitely a lot more churn than I would like. And we can actually look at that as well. If you look at the churn rate, I actually thought it would be a lot higher. You can see that the dashed lines are like the top 25% and the bottom 25%. It's somewhat in the middle, but you can see in the last year, it's churned over $1,300 in monthly revenue, which is terrible. So clearly it's not a super sticky type of a product. It churns almost as much revenue as it generates from new customers, which is not great. And you might think, okay, well, why don't I work on this? Why don't I 10x the revenue and make it more sticky, make it something irresistible? And I've tried for sure. That's why I did the big UI upgrade. I added the chat feature with the meal plans and tried to make it into a product that had more value. And the reality is it didn't really move the needle. I think it's the kind of project that's never really going to explode. It's never going to scale. It just kind of is what it is. And no matter how much marketing effort or product effort I've put into it, it just kind of stays the same. And I've had to kind of accept that as the way it is. The other thing that I can show you is the subscriber data. It has 97 paying subscribers. And I think if we open this, we can actually group them to show you the breakdown of different types of customers. So currently there's 69 premium subscribers. That's the individual plan. There's 26 pro subscribers, but those generate about twice as much revenue. So the revenue is more or less equally split between the premium and the pro. And then, as I said, I have one client for the embed service where they put the recipe generator on their own website. Oh, by the way, the Stripe revenue does not include the revenue from the app. So that is handled by a service called RevenueCat, which is awesome because it allows you like one platform to get your revenue systems working in both iOS and Android, and it consolidates them all. And what you'll notice here, side story, in December, the revenue from the apps fell off a cliff, and I didn't even pay any attention to this. I didn't see it for like a month or two. And they're like, what happened to the app revenue? Why am I not getting this revenue? It turns out my Apple developer account, which costs $99 a year and has to be renewed, was not set to auto-renew, and I somehow missed the email. So my entire Apple developer account was canceled. All of my apps were gone. All of the revenue from this app was immediately canceled. So that one oversight cost me like $200 a month, maybe $3,000 this year. This thankfully, I've got it back, and it's starting to rebound a little bit, but that was a bit of a sad story. On the traffic side of things, it's a bit of a different story. You can see this is 3 months. So it gets about 50,000 visitors a month, a little over 100,000 page views over the last 3 months. And you can see the vast majority of the referral traffic is coming from Google. This is mostly because DishGen ranks number 1 or number 2, sometimes number 3 for terms like AI recipes, recipe generator, AI recipe generator, that kind of stuff. But it also ranks really well for thousands of long tail recipes. So there's maybe 50,000 recipes that are indexed in Google from DishGen. And I would say at least 1,000 or 2,000 get some traffic every month. Like if we look at Google Search Console, the total number of clicks over the last 3 months is about the same, which you would expect, 70,000. A lot of that's coming directly from DishGen, but also AI recipe, recipe creator, AI recipes, cooking AI. And you can see it ranks pretty high for most of these terms. But when you get down to it, you can also see that there's a ton of other like long tail, like strawberry mead recipe, fresh cucumber lemonade for weight loss. Like there's a ton of long tail traffic that it gets, which makes this quite durable because it ranks highly for big terms and it ranks highly for the thousands of long tail terms as well. As far as expenses, they're very minimal. Maybe $20 a month for my Vercel hosting plan, which does this and a bunch of other projects, so it's even less than that. $10 a month for an upgraded database. Actually, the OpenAI usage for generating the recipes and the images is under like $5 to $10 a month, even though it's doing thousands and thousands of recipes. And otherwise, there's no other notable expenses. I don't do any marketing or advertising. You can see the conversion rate is very low, even though I'm getting tons of traffic from Google. So advertising has never been profitable. You know, if I'm getting free traffic and I can only convert 1 out of every few hundred into a paying customer, then it's not going to be profitable at $7 or $15 a month by running ads. And that's basically it as far as the income and expenses. Now, as far as like maintenance and upkeep, it's almost entirely passive. Software is so beautiful because it's the ultimate leverage. We talked about how Google delivers the users with no effort. My servers and the code deliver the product and the value to the users without my effort. Stripe, along with my code, handle the payments and subscription charges and cancellations and all of that with no effort. I do review the images because I allow image uploads and that could go wrong. And I also have a report feature that I check regularly to make sure no one's making any weird recipes. But otherwise, yeah, it's extremely high leverage. The revenue itself isn't insane, but the revenue per hour of work definitely is. And it enables me to spend a lot more time on other projects to generate even more passive income. But let's not get too romantic because we should be clear about what DishGen is not. I said this is a great counterpoint to all the AI extremism. And honestly, that's because it's so boring. Like it's been 3 years old and not much really happens with it. I talked earlier about how I pushed on it really hard, tried to get it to grow, and it didn't really budge. But at the same time, if I ignore it, it doesn't really die. It's kind of like the succulent of software. It just does its own thing. And I think it really is worth highlighting how this project does not reflect all of the hype that you hear about. Like every time a new model gets released and they say, oh, it's going to crush all this software, it doesn't get crushed. It just gets marginally better as I upgrade, a little better and a little cheaper. It hasn't put anyone out of a job that I know of. It hasn't gone viral on Hacker News or Product Hunt. I didn't raise a seed round at a $4 billion valuation or anything. It didn't scale to 1 million visitors or blow up or anything like that. It just quietly keeps going without any fanfare. And I think that's a story worth telling. It won't get the headlines, but that's what 95% of AI-powered startups are going to do. And that's the reality beyond the hype, I think. And I would love to talk about that reality a little bit more. Like, based on my experiences with DishGen and other things I'm building like it, what is it like to build software in this new AI era? Like, how did DishGen get started? And if you're thinking, well, that's cool, I would like to build something like this, how should I do it? Well, I do have some thoughts. There's two main factors that went into the success of DishGen, if you want to call it that. And I wouldn't say they're super encouraging or optimistic. If I launched DishGen today with no audience or no expertise, I think it would probably get 20 views a week instead of 20,000. The first factor is that I was very early with this. I remember using GPT 2.5. This was, I think ChatGPT was 3.5. So this was way before ChatGPT. It must have been in 2022. And at that point, it was not a chatbot, it was just an autocomplete. So in order to get it to work, you would have to prompt it and then it would continue your sentence. The very first thing I did was ask it to make a recipe. I had been running a food blog, so I was like, could this thing make recipes? And I said, the following is a recipe for white bean soup, and it just filled out the recipe. That was my first AI moment, and I was like, I need to build a service that other people can use. And this was before ChatGPT came out, so it was very early to the game, and that obviously had a positive impact on its success. The other thing that definitely helped is that I was running a popular food blog called One Ingredient Chef back in the day. And I hadn't been doing a whole lot with it in the year or two before I launched DishGen. But of course, having that existing platform helped it tremendously. I'm not sure the users responded that well. I sent an email and wrote a post about it. I'm not sure that did too much, but for sure, the SEO power of this blog, because it was quite popular. It had a lot of links to it. So when I put links from the blog back to DishGen, DishGen started ranking #1 for AI recipes and recipe generator. And that ultimately became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then as journalists and other people got interested in this topic of AI recipes, this would be #1, so that's what they would see, and they would write about it and link back to it, and it got more and more popular and gained a bigger advantage over the competition. So being very early, and by the way, this was so early that vibe coding didn't even exist yet. I had to code the first version by hand. It was terrible. And also having an existing audience and some domain expertise were very essential, I think, to making this succeed. And I said that wasn't a satisfying answer because it's not easy to just have those things. You can't just decide to be early or to have an audience. And now it's gotten much worse because everyone can vibe code everything. The competition has gotten so noisy that it's very hard to break through. So in my opinion, we need to start thinking about software and small business in general very differently than we have in the past. I think in order to build something, it needs to be done under very specific parameters, kind of in the way that DishGen was. And I think we should talk a little bit about how I see the future of software evolving from where we are now. In my opinion, I think AI will shape the future of software to look a lot more like DishGen. It will be built by people with deep domain expertise who have an existing audience to reach customers and to cut through the noise. There'll be projects that are much more narrow and focused and maybe a little bit weirder than what we're used to. They'll be deeply understood by their founders, very lightweight projects without much capital or expense, often run by 1 or 2 people who really know their customers and the problem they're trying to solve. They'll be very durable because they'll be too specific to be copied and too small to be absorbed by the big AI labs. But also so low in overhead that they can't really fail because they have no expenses. So if our current era of software looks like Salesforce, where you have one giant platform serving 1 million customers with the same product, I think the next era looks a lot more like a million little DishGens, where you have things that are built by one person with specific knowledge of a specific problem for a specific type of customer. They're probably built for the user themselves first as a little vibe-coded app until they're commoditized and sold to a larger community who needs it. You can imagine all kinds of stuff like customer service tools for influencers or accounting and business analytics for car washes. In the same way that the internet itself enabled that long tail for content and community, AI is already for sure enabling that long tail of software and tools. And the reason is obvious. It's because code has become cheap. AI now makes it possible to actually produce all these long tail niche products. But at the same time that code has become so much cheaper, trust, attention, taste, expertise, those kinds of things are becoming increasingly scarce and more valuable. And I do have a lot to say about that topic. I'm actually working on a video, so if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe and let me know if that's something you'd like to hear more about, if I'm on the right track. But for sure, taste, trust, expertise, and attention are going to become astronomically more valuable in an AI-first world. And honestly, maybe DishGen is like small proof of that. It's like a small vector in that direction. Because if I think about it, it mostly worked because I had the trust and attention from my food blog, because I had some early taste with AI, and because I had a little bit of expertise building software. Those things together probably helped this project succeed where it otherwise would have failed. But that's the story of DishGen. It's 3 years old this week. Happy birthday, DishGen. It's still running, still generating dependable revenue, still serving thousands of customers and making tens of thousands of recipes a week. And if the Lindy effect has any validity, it'll probably keep doing so, hopefully for many years to come. But hopefully you enjoyed this little tour. I just wanted to share this because I think it counteracts a lot of that AI hype cycle in the news, all of the doom, all of the optimism, all of the way we're going to be billionaires when Mythos comes out, but we're going to be unemployed when GPT-6 comes out. I think these real stories that represent like 95 or 99% of what's happening on the front lines kind of go under the radar because they're not as juicy or exciting, and I get that. But I think it's worth kind of highlighting them from time to time as well. So these days, as you can see, I'm working on a whole bunch of new projects, different startups and ideas. So DishGen doesn't get a whole lot of effort, but that's the way it should be, I think. As I showed throughout the video, it kind of just runs itself, which is great. But one of those new projects is making videos like this one. I should definitely take a second, first of all, to say thank you if you made it this far. I appreciate you watching, but also for the incredible support on my last video. A week ago, I had like 80 subscribers and 10 hours of total view time. And then I made that video about getting banned by Claude, and it's gotten 30,000 views and counting and 700 comments. And I'm really blown away and kind of humbled by all of the positivity and the support from that video. And for the first time, I feel like it's possible to make videos that I wanted to make, like this one, where I can share my experiments and experiences and my perspective as kind of a builder on the front lines of AI. So if that sounds interesting, I would love to have you along for the ride. But I would also love to hear from you. Like, this is very new. I'm going to do a lot of experimenting and try different content. But I would love to hear the kinds of things you would like to see from me. Is it more like tutorials on AI? Is it more about commentary on big tech? Or is it more stuff like this, overviews of my own projects? Let me know what you'd like to see. I'm really open to making all kinds of stuff. So thanks again for watching to the end, and I'll see you guys again soon.